So I'm wondering if you were aware of the records of Sakamoto and Harumi Hosono and people like that in the mid-80s in Japan. Were you absorbing this Japanese music that was also being made with very advanced technology, sampling keyboards and things, Fairlights obviously?
Right. Yeah, to some degree I was, but maybe I wasn't that interested because I didn't like the Yellow Magic Orchestra. And these were ex-Yellow Magic Orchestra people, but I did meet a lot of interesting people there. One of them was Hajima Tajibana, who did some excellent music at that time.
Plastics, he was in Plastics.
Yeah.
I saw him in Tokyo. I was there 3 months ago, and he's everywhere. I saw him twice on the street. He was at a vegetable market and on the Monte Sando and so. So where did you physically live? Which district were you living in?
Roppongi.
In Roppongi, right. Which is the foreigner area, a lot of foreigners.
Roppongi, actually no, not directly in Roppongi. I was in Roppongi, but Shibuya, I don't know, Shinjuku, around these kind of relatively central areas.
Well, this sounds very vague, like you just named 3 different areas. I mean, did you have you had one apartment, or you were moved from place to place during the time?
I also moved, yeah.
Right. I'm fascinated by that whole thing because I didn't personally experience Tokyo in the 80s, but
Well, I experienced Tokyo in the 80s, in the 90s. I haven't been to Tokyo, I think, for about 10 years now.
Right.
So my knowledge of Tokyo is limited. I was only in Tokyo, and a little bit in the countryside. I was shocked when I came to Tokyo because I thought of Japan as this place which was, the cliche, like women in kimonos and tea ceremony or whatever. And it was very, very different. It was very advanced. Actually, more advanced than I felt. It was more advanced than even London. And people were very fashion orientated, and there were a lot of things that I saw for the first time in Tokyo that I only saw 5 years later in London. For example, most women wore these fashionable rucksacks, and I thought, well, first I thought, oh yeah, a rucksack, that's kind of practical. And then, I saw more, and I thought, why are they all carrying a rucksack? And then 10 years later, everybody was wearing a rucksack.
Were you interested in fashion? Did you go to the Comme des Garçons store or something when you were in Japan?
Yeah, I was interested a fair amount. I've never been a fashion freak, but...
Right. But you walked up and down the Monte Sando, or you went to some of the places in Shibuya?
Yeah, I went to some fashion. I was interested in fashion from a kind of like a cultural point of view. I was fascinated how fashion was viewed differently at that time in Japan. A very different approach to fashion from Europe, and how very much that sank into European and I was almost saying Western culture, but then Japan is Western culture also. How that was sinking into the other regions later on, and how incredibly advanced they were in the 80s. Just to give you an example, the rucksack was one example. Sportswear was another example. And also one big thing that really struck me and that led to a later work called Little Present about being in Japan was how they integrated text into their fashion.
Meaningless English, Japanese English, Jinglish as it's called, like on t-shirts.
Yeah, or English.
Yeah, English. Yeah.
Obviously there's a funny aspect to that, but I think what a lot of people didn't realize, or perhaps still don't realize, is that basically people were using text as an ornament as text appeared everywhere on
yeah.
clothes. I mean, now for that goes without saying for us. That goes without saying. I mean, we're so used now to having people T-shirt people, and they say some kind of sentence, and nobody cares.
No, but it was a particular thing in the 80s with the American collegiate wear, especially in Japan, with these very weird phrases on them. Yes.
I mean, they were the first integrating text into not only in clothing, but everything seemed to be text.
Right.
Everything seemed to be context.
Right.
And I didn't know it to that extreme back then in Europe. Now, of course, I mean, it's a different story. But I think people are still not aware that this was very much influenced by Japanese culture. And I think here in Europe, Japanese culture is, for that reason, I find it a bit under appreciated.
Right. I'm running out of hard disk memory. This Wave label, was it the Live agency which put you in touch with the Wave label? Were they connected somehow, these two companies?
No, we found that, my manager and I, we found that deal.
Right, and this was a British manager you had at that point?
Yeah.
What was the manager's name?
John Hollingsworth.
Oh, John Hollingsworth, okay. Who was associated with the Cherry Red, he worked at Cherry Red?
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe through VAP, there was a company called VAP, I think Cherry Red were working with in Japan.
I don't know, no,
right.
we just visited, basically.
Yeah.
All these people, yeah. And everybody said yes.
Right. And how do you think
which meant no often.
Well, exactly. Why do you think the Japanese were particularly interested in your music? Did they find it very advanced, or were they interested in the German quality of your music, or do you know why it was embraced, at least for this album?
Well, I mean, you know, in Japan, they're interested in everything.
They like very. They have good taste, I would say. Well, it's true.
Yeah. I mean, there's such a wide interest.
They love things which have a serious avant-garde quality. So I think they probably enjoyed this, and also it is a very aggressive album in some ways, but then there are these moments of quietness and gentleness, like the song we're discussing. So yeah, it's very fascinating to know what it sounded like to them. Were the label happy with the album when you delivered the?
Yeah, I think they were very happy. Yeah.
Did they think? Obviously, they wouldn't think it would be a big commercial seller.
I was never. Well, we didn't discuss that. I think they maybe overestimated the potential.
Right. And did they have a promotion campaign with posters or displays in record stores?
Yeah, they promoted it very well. Yeah.
In Wave Shibuya, up the hill, they had a store.
Sure,
also Wave Roppongi, they had two branches that I know. I'm interested in the way this song has no peers. It doesn't seem to have any. You know, if you're on Spotify and you listen to this track, if it's on Spotify, and then it somehow suggests a similar track, where would Spotify go to find a similar track? I mean, there is no similar track as far as I know. It seems to be completely without context. Would you, if you had to be Spotify or Last FM and choose a similar track, what would you tell the listener to listen to?
Well, it's a dear track to me, and it's a very special track even to me. And I think also partly, it was also partly recorded in here in Berlin at the what's it called? You know where?
Hansa.
Hansa.
It was the mixing was done at Hansa.
The mixing was done at Hansa, and while we were mixing, the Chernobyl accident happened.
Oh.
And Hansa was very strange anyway at that time, because it was directly opposite the wall. You could see Russian soldiers with their machine guns and stuff. And then this Chernobyl thing, actually, I'm not sure, was that already after the fall of
86, just before, but actually some people think that Chernobyl accelerated the fall of the wall, yes.
Yeah. So, it was just very strange, and I think, especially the second version, taking them out the original context, and making it more sparse, and with featuring Billy's vocal arrangement, was basically also a result of sitting there at Hansa, and the sound engineer that I was working with had left. He didn't like the approach, and then this weird accident happened, and then there was another group sitting next door called the Psychedelic Furs, and everybody was kind of in this strange. So for me, there are all these things connected to it. So even for me, it's a kind of odd, strange, but very dear.
Right. And have you ever heard a song and thought, hey, that reminds me of Oben im Eck? Probably not, right?
No.